Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, and welcome to another episode of Chair Hospital. So this is your basic pub chair design, which means that you have a frame that is mortised into the legs in the front, and the rear leg and the back seat rail are one piece. Now on this one, besides the obvious damage of the broken stretcher, back here we've got some wood that's splitting, and the whole thing is pretty rickety. So the first thing I'm going to do is see how much of it I can take apart without doing more damage. It's kind of an ominous sign when you discover screws that aren't the same color. This is obviously an original one. It's bare steel, and so it's got a light coat of rust on it. This is a modern zinc coated screw, and I have to wonder why somebody thought that was necessary. As usual, when you're coming to furniture repair, the old repair is usually the bigger problem than what originally broke. And here we have the reason for those screws put in the bottom here. This piece has come apart. Some of it quite a while ago, some of it more recently. And when you got a chair this old, you can be pretty sure that the original adhesive was hide glue, which is actually made from horse hides. And it gets old, gets brittle, cracks. And most of the time, on a chair, especially one that's this rickety, you can break it apart with a good rap of a hammer. And that will certainly make some of this work a lot easier. The first piece to address is this part right here. It's getting late, and I'll be able to let this sit in the clamps overnight. I'm using Titebond Original here, mainly because that's what I've got on the shelf right now. I'll be using regular hide glue for the joints, but since this is broken, split, cracked, separated wood, I'm going to use a pretty strong glue, and I won't have to resort to putting screws through it like they did before, which actually from that spot right there the screw went crooked and just made the problem worse. Let me get a towel and clean up this squeeze out, and we'll see this again in the morning. That looks pretty good. Now we go on to the rest of the chair. Now the oldest joke in TV woodworking is you can never have too many clamps. And while that's true, if you went into a furniture mill late 1800s into the 1900s, you wouldn't see a lot of clamps. What they used was nails. The joints were cut, they were slathered with hide glue, and then instead of clamping it, there would be these little small nails, which are always a pain, because most of the time you're just going to break the tenon, split it, because these nails are buried so deep you're not going to get them out no matter what. But I'm optimistic, and we're going to give this one a try. There it goes. Fortunately, there are no nails in the stretchers, which is going to make most of this repair a lot simpler. We're at the Packard Precision 12-speed drill press, and this is kind of a typical setup for this kind of a job. Now, curved chair legs can be a problem to drill, but there's usually a flat spot somewhere that you can clamp onto, get it in place, and then stabilize it with wedge blocks. You just have to make sure that everything is clamped down tight. You got your drill press set with it centered in that hole as well as possible, and then you just go ahead and drill that old piece out. I will say, if you think there's nails in there, chip it out with a chisel, because even the best Forstner bit in the world cannot digest a nail. Repairing stretchers with broken tendons is actually pretty easy. I drill a hole in the end of the tenon, then I put a short piece of dowel in, and it goes right in place like that. Now on the other side, we have evidence of an old repair, and that usually makes me a little bit anxious. It's kind of strange. Someone has stuffed rags around it to take up some of the gap, but it fits fairly tight. I'm going to scrape this off and use a different technique for taking up the slack. The most important part of any glue up is the dry fit. That's when you make sure all the pieces fit, and more importantly, you know how you're going to clamp them all. It was during dry fits like this is where I discovered it's much easier to put a chair together on its back like this than standing up or even upside down. I also learned that the best way to get the rope clamp on it was laying down. I like rope clamps for chairs because it pulls everything towards the center. Tension is easy to adjust. It gives me a chance to look at everything, make sure it's all nice, straight, and tight before I actually start applying glue. Now I think I'm prepared to start the glue up. Now I haven't knocked these two joints apart for a couple reasons. First, because getting the nails out is kind of rough. You always end up losing a good bit of wood, and I don't want to do that. Second, this mortise and the mortise from this direction intersect. So I can fill this mortise up with glue, and it will flow all around that joint as it's curing. I start by pouring a generous amount down each mortise. Then I use my acid brush to make sure that I've got it all up on the walls. And that looks like a little bit too much, so I can just draw that out with the brush. But hide glue itself is water soluble, so the cleanup afterwards is actually a little bit easier than other glues. Next, I brush the tenon and put a good generous coat in the mortise. And that goes in. And I've got the other one here. Now to make life a little easier with all these pieces that look so much alike, I've actually color coded them with chalk. Now because I've got these funny tenons here that somebody tried to shim up with a cloth, I've got a slightly different technique. I dip the tenon in the glue, get a nice thick coat on it, and then I dip it in fine sawdust. And when it sets, that will take care of any gaps between the tenon and the mortise. Now I don't have this incredibly tight, but snug, so the joints are still a little bit flexible. And what I'll do is look for all the run out from the glue, make sure I don't have any obvious spots. Then I'm going to put it on the floor. Now with the seat in place and some weight on it to make sure that all the legs stay level, now I tighten it down really tight. Now this is going to sit overnight and we'll come back to it in the morning. Now I've got to fit in these corner braces, and I'm going to do that with screws instead of nails, and each one's actually going to be sanded down to fit its particular corner. This corner fits pretty well after I've sanded the glue off of it. I did notice it's got these strange holes on this side. These are counterboard screw holes, which would hold the board against the wood like that. Wrong direction for a brace. So this is either a later repair or maybe the furniture mill was just using up whatever scraps they had laying around. In the back, we have a curved line. So I want to take my pencil and just make a good line right there. And then a quick trip over to the belt sander, and this will be ready to put in. This is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And I thank you for sitting through this video on how to make a wobbly chair not so wobbly anymore. We really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. If there's any questions, put in the comments. I respond to all, and I'm happy to answer anything. So again, thank you for watching.